To stay on time again today, just like we did yesterday. I'm so proud of us for staying on time. It's very respectful of everyone's time, and I know people need to get off to airports and get home in a decent hour, so we'll end on time today as well. A few housekeeping notes. Remember, parking validated at the front desk. You don't have to pay to park in the garages. CEUs, make sure you sign up and do your evaluations and leave them appropriately with Sherry out on the desk there. And they can also answer any questions about CEUs. Okay, so let's get started. I don't know about you, but I had trouble sleeping last night. I was excited, not just about the ground that we covered yesterday and the enormous depth of information that I was processing in my tiny little brain while trying to calm down enough to sleep. But I was excited about today because we've assembled for you a truly impressive group of individuals who have been thinking about implementation and thinking about the best ways to scale up programs that are going to address the needs of kids who have been traumatized and who are hitting the classrooms, but also in ways to think about engaging school districts in the dialogue about universal prevention. And then in our afternoon, we have partners from federal agencies we didn't even know we had who've been thinking about this implementation and policy change and how to implore policymakers to open up the budgets and allocate and right resource these endeavors within the school system. And also people who have been working at the policy level and who know how to make us smart about engaging our local and state policy and have been doing this at the federal level. So an enormous amount of resources here that we've assembled for you. And then please stay tuned for our panel discussion at the end. We're devoting a lot of time for that. And we're doing that for good reason because we want to engage all of you who are the front lines of this issue. We want your ideas. We want to know your trepidations. We want to hear the barriers that come to your mind. There will be conference proceedings in the form of a book that will be the result of these 2 days. And the final chapter of that book will be that panel discussion. So let's make it count. And let your voice be heard. Again, we're doing our slide-on, right? Did I get it right? Slido. I can't get it right. But you know what? It is on the back of your thing. And I should have realized that. Yes, I knew that. This is how we will field questions. So when you have questions, go to this website, and the password is Trauma 2016. You can both add questions and vote for questions that you would like to see elevated to discussion during the discussion portions of each of the panels, and then at the end we'll do it again. Okay, I've said enough. I'm going to turn it over to Sheridan Miyamoto. Sheridan is one of the faculty at our cluster hire in the Child Maltreatment Solutions Network. She's in the School of Nursing, and she's not going to tell you this, but she just got a big Department of Justice grant to do some telehealth solutions in all the communities in Pennsylvania. So we're pretty excited that Sheridan's here. Okay, thank you.
Good morning. I'm excited to invite our speakers for this morning session up to the podium. They are going to be talking about improving educational efforts in schools. So I'm very excited about this presentation because it's going to demonstrate how researchers are working with administrators, social work efforts, and mental health efforts in schools and some of the solutions that they're coming up with. Okay, so our first speaker this morning, we have two actually that are going to be speaking together, is Dr. Brian Bliss, who currently serves as superintendent of Solanco School District in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. He's a Penn State graduate, earning both his bachelor's and master's degree here. He earned his doctorate in administration and policy from the University of Delaware. Dr. Bliss has served as an assistant superintendent, middle school principal, and high school English teacher. He served as an adjunct instructor for 9 years at Penn State, teaching primarily school law. He's authored numerous articles for educational publications. He serves on Pennsylvania State University Education Outreach Advisory Board and on the board of directors for the Pennsylvania Association of Rural and Small Schools and the United Way of Lancaster County. Dr. Bliss received the Pennsylvania Association for Curriculum and Developments Award in 2013. Also speaking is Dr. Carlo Panlilio, one of our own, an assistant professor in the Department of Educational Psychology, Counseling, and Special Education, and a faculty member with the Child Maltreatment Solutions Network here at Penn State. Dr. Panlilio received his PhD in Human Development from the University of Maryland with a specialization in developmental science and a certificate in measurement and statistics. As we heard yesterday, his research focuses on understanding the developmental trajectories of school readiness domains, specifically emotion regulation and language, across the preschool years for maltreated children. He's also interested in understanding how child welfare-specific context factors of placement stability and caregiver quality at different time points influence development. He's also interested in understanding how these different developmental trajectories predict later academic achievement. In Carla's short time here, he has built tremendous partnerships with educational leaders like Dr. Bliss and is working to provide educators with the tools and solutions that they need to optimize learning environments for children who've experienced trauma. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Bliss, Dr. Panlilio.
Good morning. It's great to see everybody, and I appreciate the invitation. The presentation this morning is really on a partnership that is in process. It's a partnership between Penn State and a public school district in Pennsylvania with a lot of potential, and I think perhaps the most educative portion of it would be how it formed and the direction that we're taking now, because there is a lot of potential. Just a little bit of context. I'm the superintendent of Solanco School District, and you can see up there where we're located. We're actually not that far from Philadelphia, about an hour in the southeast corner. Now, we're 182 square miles, which in this area would not be a very large school district in terms of land-wise, or not unusual, but in the southeastern quadrant of Pennsylvania, that is the largest in terms of land. There are 16 school districts in Lancaster County, and we represent 1/5 of all the land, yet 5% of the population. So we are a rural district, not far from Philadelphia, not far from Baltimore, and 2 hours from New York City. So it's a unique area. Just a few facts about Solanco. Solanco actually stands for Southern Lancaster County, and I find this funny that many of our teachers don't know that that's what Solanco means, even though they work there. 3,700 students. If you're not from Pennsylvania, we have local school districts, not countywide school districts. So 7 schools, 1 high school, 2 middle schools, 4 elementary schools. We are by far the lowest taxing district in the county, and I think that's relevant here in just a minute when I paint context. We're debt-free as well. We have 0 debt. We try to pay cash for any building projects. They're usually small renovations and such, but of the 500 districts in Pennsylvania, there are only 8 that have 0 debt. So to an extent, we're very proud of our financial situation, but by the same token, we're also struggling to provide resources for our students. Our poverty rate is 54%. That's a bit of a deceiving number because the depth of poverty is generally not measured with a straight percentage, but that number is growing significantly. Just some other fun facts. We have the national runner-up dairy judging team. We're very good at that. Our kids traveled to Scotland to compete. We have a small little elementary school named Bart Coleraine, which only has 2 classes per grade. It's actually a 90 square mile area, but it's very sparsely populated, but it's twice a blue ribbon school in this rural environment. If you ever saw the 1980 movie Witness with Harrison Ford, Chunks of it were filmed in our district. Robert Fulton was born in the Solanco School District, and actually the little farmhouse, there's an elementary school next to it now called Claremont, which is the name of his steamship. A number of our teachers don't seem to know that either. A little bit of local trivia. And Johnny Weir, the figure skater, is from Solanco, if you ever followed him as well. He'll tell an interesting story when he was younger that the cornfields would be cut down and there would be ice all over the cornfields. And he learned to skate by navigating through the corn stalks, which is interesting. These are the kind of data points that I like, and they're relevant here in terms of context. Since we have a low tax rate, we also have a little bit of an earned income tax. We think that's a fairer way to tax, which a lower tax rate spread out over a larger population, and it's dependent on income to an extent. But it also means that we get a tax return for everyone in our district. So we have some pretty good statistics on community wealth. So this chart here just gives you a little bit of context of the Solanco School District. Basically, the number of tax returns on the left and the household income represented on them as well, which tells us that 50% of the community households earn less than $30,000, which is an interesting dynamic when you think of the salaries our teachers make and where that places them if they live in the community as well. 75% of the community households earns less than $45,000 a year. In terms of local taxation, so we're at 12 mills. And you can see, these are the 16 school districts in Lancaster County. And again, this is just context. Per $100,000 assessed value of your home, your tax bill, if your home was assessed at exactly $100,000, your tax bill in Solanco would be $1,200. And you can see what that $100,000 assessment looks like in neighboring districts. There are two other districts that are in somewhat similar situations as us. One would be the Columbia Borough District, which is a urban district, and Lancaster City, which is urban. And you can see their taxation rate there. But I think this is relevant because Solanco, if you know the community, we are not growing. It is a beautiful, beautiful place to live. And it's a wonderful place to raise children, but we have very little infrastructure, no public water or sewer except in 1 square mile in one borough, no businesses moving in. So we are becoming, for lack of a better description, more different than districts around us. If you would go to the east of us into Chester County, which is where we border, the tax rates are triple. So our houses are worth less and our tax rate is lower. And when it comes to raising taxes, for example, in the Act 1 index, simple math is a percent of a small number is still a small number. So our resources are limited, so we are trying to be very targeted, but the needs are great as well. When your community wealth is lower, we get a lot of transition. We have a lot of trailer parks. We have a lot of rental trailer parks as well. We actually, of the 3,700 students we have in our district, we have an additional 2,000. They're Amish, and they do not attend our schools as well. There are about 120 one-room schoolhouses in our community that the Amish populate. The Amish do not avail themselves to school district resources except in some unique situations. Occasionally, they will use our bus transportation, or in truth, if there are some significant developmental needs or health needs, they have asked for our services as well. Usually the threshold for that is pretty high as well. But the Amish also are engaged in a lot of rental housing as well. So we are seeing some significant issues in our community, not necessarily unique compared to other communities, but I think it's growing and it's noticeable. Unfortunately, we're also known for this. The Nickel Mines Amish school shooting occurred in our district about 12 years ago. The parent who perpetrated this actually dropped his children off to our Blue Ribbon School, Bart Coleraine Elementary School, and then traveled to the school, which is in our district as well. And when we talk about trauma, this certainly is a very public traumatic incident. Actually, the girls who are the victims of this are, some of them are still almost of age in terms of the services that we're providing because we still work with them. The community, now this school has been raised, but the first responders and the community they still get together to kind of commemorate this and to work through this. And I say this because We've had a number of traumatic incidents that are very public. We're very good at incident response. And we brought in Sherry Lovery from Oregon when this happened. So when we have issues, for example, like a student suicide or a death, we are very good at mobilizing resources and providing a lot of support for student and teachers. But the long-term effects, we are lacking in. So unfortunately, when something tragic happens, we know how to handle it in the short term. Just a little bit of performance data here, and not to go too far into this. And one of the things I think is relevant here, and I was talking earlier about this as well. As a superintendent, I'm sometimes last to know. I acknowledge that generally people are on their best behavior when they talk to me. Principals like to put on a good face. Teachers as well. The ones that don't, you know, this is a serious issue. There's a bit of a situation where if we have an issue, I might be the last to know. Or if I'm to encourage a school board to act on an issue, I have to expose a problem. And I have to expose a problem in public, which is not so easy to do, because if I expose the problem in public, then the judgment on the district is rendered, and it's a bit of a situation. So you have to be careful that there's an emperor has no clothes situations going on when it comes to trauma. And I see this in a lot of districts. I've seen some superintendents, not to disparage any colleagues, but they don't recognize that they have issues, nor is there necessarily a mechanism to understand that there is an issue. And to expose it is to, for example, go in front of your school board and expose a problem and ask for help. Not that we like to put our heads in the sand, but there's a system here that may prevent an addressing of an issue because of that. So it makes it a little bit challenging. Just briefly, where my concern lies when we look at student performance data, and interestingly, when we talk about student performance, the more we focus at Solanco and student performance, the less we look at data. The more we look at climate and environment and emotional health of students. I find that often the case, because we are pretty data savvy. We've had Solanco is a district where you can get some things done without a lot of interference, for lack of a better term, and you can really be innovative. So we have some very good programs when it comes to data. We have some good curriculum design and fidelity measures. We have common assessments authored by teachers across the board. We ensure pervasive use of exemplary teaching strategies, and we monitor this. We do all of this well, yet our achievement numbers don't necessarily reflect this in terms of comparative numbers. So this is simply all the districts in Lancaster County and their average school performance profile, which is a composite number of performance and achievement and growth measures and attendance measures. It really, in my opinion, is a horrible way to measure schools, but it's a very public way to do so. But if you would just look briefly at, this is where we measure in our elementaries, this is where we measure at our middle schools, and this is where we measure in our high schools. And despite a lot of technically sound instructional reforms, you can see what's happening here. And each time this happens, I look to the background and the breadth of knowledge and the home lives of our students, because I think these issues become more pronounced the older students are. When we have students at the elementary level, we can kind of create a self-contained program where we can meet a lot of needs, but the older they get, the breadth of their background really starts to matter. So this has always been a distressing data point for me, especially the growth statistics. So the more we look at this, the more we look at climate. In addition, we are seeing a lot of incidents with regards to trauma. The number of students we place in out-of-district placements, we're over 40 students at the elementary level we place out-of-district in emotional support settings, which is significant in terms of the price tag for that. That's $56,000 per child that we transport. And that's after a continuum of services that we have. We have kindergartners that are being placed out of district. We have some students that are unable to be transported because of how violent they are. Plus, we have issues within the classroom. We're just seeing this at a younger and younger age, and it represents a challenge. And like I said before, to kind of confront this head on and to recognize it is important. So we started working with teachers on providing the resources because, in truth, I think teachers are ill-equipped coming out of college to work with students who are presenting significant behavioral challenges and emotional needs. It's not their fault. But some fight, some fly, the fight or flight syndrome when it comes to that. Some simplify children, some do not. But it represents a challenge. It's a skill set that's somewhat rare, so we need to develop it. So in terms of talking to the teachers, I introduced this narrative in terms of the shifting from what's wrong with the child to what happened to the child. I think is one of the healthier things that we've done because that actually resonated with a number of teachers. If you have a child who is clearly the victim of trauma, and we have some significant ones, I am aware of at least 40 children and youth referrals in our district last year that we would have filed. It's a little bit easier for teachers to see this at the elementary level, but the older the children become, honestly, the more teachers, and I'm generalizing here, blame the students or dislike the students or their conduct is off-putting. And that's difficult, that's challenging, especially when you need them to give their best to the child and they don't like the child. If you don't like a child, you can't fake that, and the child will not like you. It's that simple. When we interview teachers, I ask them a question. I say, do you want your students to like you? And so many teachers say, no, I want my students to respect me. And I do not hire those teachers because depending on the mood I'm in, I will say, well, can you tell me a teacher you dislike but respect? And that kind of trips them up. We really work hard to try to hire empathetic, caring teachers. Our narrative is to inspire students. We believe performance will increase if you can do these things, but the concept of empathy and the characteristic of empathy, some teacher candidates have it and a lot do not. I'm surprised at how many do not. And some of the questions that I ask in the interview, I would hire solely on empathy because I think teaching skills, while essential, and some are very good at it coming out of school, you can build that base. You can build that knowledge if someone is deficient, but if you do not have empathy, you cannot reach a child no matter how technically proficient you are. So guidance counselors do very well in our interviews. Elementary teachers, very well. But high school and secondary have a little bit of a stereotype there, but finding the empathetic high school teacher, the empathetic elementary, or the empathetic middle school teacher, that's a little bit more of a challenge. So the empathetic teachers as well are the ones who take all of this on. It's a very challenging profession because of that. If you see that often, over and over again, it can wear on you. It can burn you out. And I've had other teachers, where we talk about a child's background and what's happening in the home on the weekend, and some teachers will come back with, yes, but we must hold them accountable. We hear that kind of dialogue, and I really think we're dead in the water when we're starting to have that conversation. If you ever want to see a school in a death spiral, it's a school where the faculty is revising its discipline code. They're changing penalties and making them more robust. That is a school that is on the wrong path, in my opinion. So our narrative has been to inspire students. That's a very challenging thing to place in front of your faculty, but I think it's essential. Now, the Solanco community, since it's a rural area where there's a lot of poverty, getting the community together is a bit of a challenge, yet we have done this with a number of different groups. The community is mobilized to provide assistance for the community, and a lot of it is faith-based. Our faith-based community we have a good relationship with. We actually have probably a tighter relationship with them than most. There are rules, and we have a couple faith-based leaders in the community who understand the rules and kind of play as a gatekeeper to make sure that it happens, but we let Young Life and Wildlife and different groups come into our lunches and play board games with our kids and mentor our students and other things. So if there is a need in the community, we would go to the faith-based community and they will provide for us. That's kind of the relationship. So we've created a network, and here's just a list of the different networks that have come together. In addition, the school district itself has really raced to provide support, targeted support for our students and their needs. A lot of this, though, just feels like there's no coherent plan. We need this, we need this, we need this, which is why we needed some expertise that was beyond us. You've seen these before, clearly, but when I introduced this to the faculty, This resonated